Okay, we're ready? Okay, I will call to order the Monday, July 25th, 2022 meeting of the Oregon City Planning Commission. Before we begin, can we please do a roll call?
Commissioner Bob LaSalle.
Here.
Commissioner Chris Staggs.
Here.
Vice Chair Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Chair Chris Waterhouse.
Here.
Commissioner
Here. Here.
Here. Thank you. All right, we are all here. Before we begin, do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda? Darn. All right. First public hearing is a legislative hearing, LEG 22-00002, amendments to Chapter 17.04.020, definition, and Chapter 17.42, flood management overlay district of the Oregon City Municipal Code. It is a legislative file, and I have a legislative script. One public hearing on a legislative application is scheduled for tonight. Our role is to conduct the public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before us. In making those decisions, we must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. Legislative actions involve the adoption of or amendment of the city's land use regulations, comprehensive plan maps, inventories, and other policy documents that affect the entire city or large portions of it. Legislative actions which affect land use shall begin with a public hearing before the Planning Commission. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. Upon a recommendation from the Planning Commission on a legislative action, the City Commission shall hold at least one public hearing on the proposal. Any interested person may present written or oral testimony on the proposal at or prior to the hearing. At the conclusion of the hearing, the City Commission may adopt, modify, or reject the legislative proposal, or it may remand the matter to the Planning Commission for further consideration. If the decision is to adopt or at least some form of the proposal and therefore amend the city's land use regulations, comprehensive plan, official zoning maps, or some component of any of these documents, the City Commission decision shall be enacted as an ordinance. Public testimony will be called on in the order it was requested in advance of the meeting. If you have not emailed city staff at planning@orcity.org to request to speak and would like to testify, please raise your virtual or physical hand when I ask if there are others in the audience who would like to participate. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. If you would like to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please state your mailing address or email address. Testimony and evidence should be directed towards the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they're not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the initial hearing is closed. I believe we do need to ask our commissioners if there are any, was it conflicts of interest? What was the?
So the only limitation to the Planning Commission's consideration of this issue would be conflicts of interest, would be some financial interest in the outcome. But other than that, ex parte communications or personal feelings about floodplain management would be germane to and could be considered as part of this decision.
Okay, so let's go down the row of commissioners one at a time and ask if there are any conflicts of interest. We'll start with Commissioner LaSalle.
I have no conflicts of interest.
Okay, Commissioner Staggs?
I have none.
Commissioner Mitchell?
I have none.
As for myself, I have none. Commissioner West?
I have none.
Commissioner Gage?
I have none.
And Commissioner Stoll?
I have none.
All right, we have no conflicts of interest. Okay, I guess we are time for the applicant, and the applicant is
We'll start with me.
Miss Christina. All right, go ahead.
All right, we're going to bring up the presentation. I have one slide, and then I'm going to forward it over to Josh Wheeler, our Assistant
Thank you.
City Engineer. But let me get this started. Thank you, Chair Schlagenhofer and Planning Commissioners. This is a legislative file, as Ms. Richter indicated. There are Planning Commission hearings between legislative files require hearings in front of the Planning Commission and City Commission. Those number of hearings are at the discretion of each body, though staff is recommending approval this evening and has everything ready. The Planning Commission wants to move this forward to the City Commission. As I said, disclosures or ex parte conversations are not required. You just did your conflict of interest. And to date, no public comments have been received. Notice was given to all properties within 300 feet of the flood management overlay district, and we've received no comments. Oh, sorry, thank you. We've received no comments to date on this. Just real quickly, the proposal. This is a request from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, as part of our Oregon City Community Rating System Program Review, which Mr. Wheeler will talk a little bit more about. We're part of a program that reduces the flood insurance rate in Oregon City. And so because we are in this program, there's additional requirements that are called for the city. These code changes do not further restrict the ability to complete development in the floodplain. This is merely clarification of existing city policy. And more importantly, there's a bit of a timing issue on this. If the city does not approve and implement these code changes, the city will lose its status as a CRS community, and insurance discounts will no longer be available. So Mr. Wheeler will talk a little bit more of this, but the reason you're seeing it this summer, it is one of the requirements that came out of our review by FEMA, and they have a time kind of limit of for how long we need to get these adopted in order to stay within the program. So I'm going to pass this over to Mr. Wheeler.
Which way does it go?
There you go.
There we go. Again, I am Josh Wheeler, the Assistant City Engineer in the Public Works Department of Oregon City. And what we're talking about tonight are these small code changes, and they're related to the Community Rating System Program. So commonly referred to as CRS, is a program that the city has participated in and has been eligible for since October 1st, 2003. To remain in the program, it requires annual reports that we do on an annual basis stating the types of things we're doing, such as floodplain education, documentation of building in the floodplain, and a record of inquiries for people that are looking to develop in the floodplain. Every 5 years, we get recertified. The certification system is a 1 through 10 rating system where 10 is the least and 1 is the most. We are currently at a rating of 8. We expect after this process to be up to a rating of 6. A city like Oregon City would not be able to typically get into a rating in the 1 to 5 range. Those are held for coastal cities, but ones with rivers like us can get to the range that we're getting to. And so we have spent a fair amount of the past year taking what we did 5 years ago and updating it to a level much more specific than we did 5 years ago to try and improve this rating. Are you doing it or am I? Oh, okay. Sorry. There we go. So one of the requirements of our 5-year certification is revision to our city code. The last time the city code was updated in Chapter 1742 of the Floodplain Overlay District was in 2010 through Ordinance 10-1003. The changes that we are looking to make are in 1704, we added a definition for the phrase machinery and equipment. And in Chapter 1742, we included, which is Flood Management Overlay District, we included the inclusion of manufactured homes in a section that they requested, and the inclusion stating the phrase machinery and equipment that they specifically requested. We feel that this information is already in the code, and we tried numerous times to get them to agree to our current code and state building code and all the things that are followed through floodplain management. But to satisfy them, we needed to go through this process to amend the code to be exactly the wording that they wanted. Generally, the floodplain overlay zone is in the blue in the map in front of you, generally along the Clackamas and the Willamette rivers, and a little bit outside of that. It does not include what we call the 1996 floodplain, floodway area or flooding area. It was the big flood that happened back in the 90s. The regulated area is the part that it would normally flood in a typical year or in a 100-year situation. The community rating system, as I said, is a 1 to 10 rating system. We are currently at an 8, and we're looking to go to a 6. What the arrows show you on your screen is that currently, if you are in what's called a special flood hazard area, which is the area that was generally shown in the blue map a couple slides ago, you currently get a 10% discount for that. If we get to the 6 by passing this ordinance and all the other work that we've already done, we would move to a 6, which doubles that discount to 20%. The new thing that is happening in FEMA is also, and it's the chart you see, the third column over, is if you're not in a special flood hazard area, but you have intermittent flooding, let's say that you are near a seasonal stream or near a stream that's not regulated by floodplain, you may be eligible to get a form of insurance. I don't believe it's called floodplain insurance, but it's a form of insurance that helps you with that type of flooding. And in the FEMA system now, by being a CRS community in a non-special flood hazard area, SFHA, those discounts are half of what the special flood hazard areas are. So a community with a 6 rating would get a 10% discount for people choosing to seek insurance for non-flood hazard areas. What is the impact? There are 215 parcels located in the 100-year floodplain that's in that area called the special flood hazard area. Again, that's the 20% discount, which would be a 10% increase from where we currently are. And then all other parcels, as I mentioned before, it's officially called Zone X when you look at the maps, would receive a 10% discount. And that's all I have to provide you, so I'm here for any questions.
Okay, any questions?
Just real quick, one of the slides said that it doesn't make it, the first slide that Ms. Robertson-Gardner showed us says that it does not further restrict the ability to complete development. I assume that also means that it doesn't make it any easier.
That is correct,
Develop.
yes.
Really
And just as an example, just so you all know, in Chapter 7, I'm going to get the 1742.160, which is the flood management area standards. In looking at its items, E, construction standards, you see anchoring to manufactured homes in there, something they're making us put in a different section. And you also see items in here about electrical heating, ventilation, plumbing, and air conditioning. That's what machinery and equipment is. And so that's why we try to tell them it's in here. Why is that not good enough? They needed it this way, and so we complied, or we are attempting to comply.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner LaSalle.
Of the, there was 210 or 11 something units.
215 parcels currently mapped in the
Are
floodplain.
those both commercial and residential?
I have not looked at the zoning there.
A majority is zoned mixed-use downtown, but there is some residential zoning. But a majority is mixed-use downtown.
Okay.
Mr. Wheeler, I was going to ask, so you're saying that this is just expanding your language on a code and that everything is the same after we make these revisions as before? So, but I was going to ask if there really were changes and if the existing properties are grandfathered in, but you're saying there really aren't any on-the-ground changes?
No, these are purely
Just language.
clarifications to meet a standard by a federal agency.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion?
So we're looking for a motion to recommend approval to the city commission? Okay.
Yes, that is what we would be saying.
Move recommendation, move to recommend to the city commission approval of, sorry, no, I haven't got the numbers.
Oh, sorry. Where did it go? Doesn't make any sense. Here we go.
Do you want to scroll back to the first
LEG
page?
22.
Thank you.
Of LEG 22-2 amendments to chapter 17.04020 and 17.42.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we call a vote on this? Okay?
Commissioner LaSalle,
Aye.
Commissioner Staggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Schlagenhofer,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Gage. Aye. Commissioner Stoll.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that was quick. Public hearing number 2. It's a general land use application. It's a quasi-judicial application. Continuance of GLUA-21-000045 and MAS-21-000006, may have been an extra zero in there. VAR 22-000001, Park Place Crossing General Development Plan, and I have a quasi-judicial script to read. One public hearing on land use applications are scheduled tonight. Our role is to conduct a public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before us. In making those decisions, we must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. Members of the Planning Commission are to be unbiased. Before the start of the hearing, I'll ask the planning commissioners whether they have any potential conflicts such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. I will also ask whether any of the planning commissioners have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge of relevant facts, such as from a visit to the site in question. Any member of the audience may question any planning commissioner about their disclosures. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Planning Commission will follow is set out in state law and Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the Planning Commission website and on that door. Public testimony will be called on in the order it was requested in advance of the meeting. If you have not emailed city staff at planning@orcity.org the request to speak and would like to testify, please raise your virtual or physical hand when I ask if there's others in the audience who would like to participate. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. If you would like to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please state your mailing address or email address. Testimony and evidence should be directed towards the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, Copies must be submitted to city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised on the record for the consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient detail and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the City Commission or State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to that issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Now, the record is already open. We're opening the hearing for Oregon City file number GLUA-21-00045, MAS 21-00006, VAR 22-00001, Park Place Crossing General Development Plan. Before we begin, I'll ask every planning commissioner if they have had any new ex parte contact, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement they would like to declare, or if they have had another site visit. If there has been a site visit, the planning commissioner must declare what he or she perceived. I will start on my left with Commissioner Stoll.
Oregon City News started showing up randomly in my mailbox a couple weeks ago. Today I was looking through and I saw an article or an opinion piece, I think. I got about 2 paragraphs into it before I realized that it was written by the applicant's representative. Shut the paper, put it down. I gained nothing of substance from reading those 2 paragraphs. That's all.
Okay. Any other site visit?
No,
site visit?
not since last.
Conflicts of interest? Yep.
Nothing else changed.
All right,
Commissioner
Commissioner
Stoll?
Staggs.
I think
Yep.
what we'll do is we'll put that article in the record.
Yep, that sounds good.
And if we can't get it, we'll reach out to you.
Yeah, I can
for
take a
copy.
photo and
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Gage.
None of the items.
Nothing
Apply.
new?
Nothing new.
Nothing new from Gage. All right. Commissioner West.
I have something new to add to the record. I did go visit the site with Aquila, with Mr. Giles' property, and so one side of it, the Trailview Drive side, it looked like a sloping property with both deciduous and coniferous trees. And the other side, where he walked me to, the other side of Journey Drive there, I didn't go in, I didn't venture in with the blackberries, so that's all I saw there. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mitchell.
No changes in my declaration since our last meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Staggs.
I don't have any changes either.
Okay, nothing new. Commissioner LaSalle.
No new ex parte contact or changes in my previous statements.
Okay. And as for myself, nothing new to declare as well. Okay. Would anyone in the audience care to question any of the commissioners on their statements? Anyone online? I see none. Okay. So there is no staff report, but who's?
Chair Schlagenhofer,
Yes.
I can give a brief overview.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Walter.
Thank you, yes. Good evening, Commissioners and Chair Schlagenhofer. I'm Pete Walter, Planning Manager. Tonight, staff's recommending that the Planning Commission open the public hearing, take public testimony from anyone here or online who wishes to comment, and continue the hearing until August 22nd. Reason for this is originally we had proposed that we would be providing a recommendation this evening, but both the applicant and staff need additional time to analyze several concerns which are outlined in the cover memo, and to review the revised proposal, and also to address issues raised at the August 11th hearings and the July 11th hearing. And due to time constraints and because of ongoing analysis, we have not provided recommended findings or a revised staff report this evening. The applicant has requested this continuance as well and has also granted us a 30-day extension of the 120-day decision deadline, which takes the decision deadline to October 23rd, 2022. And at the July 11th hearing, additional questions and concerns were raised by the Planning Commission, and those included, and I was going to bullet these, and then if there was any additional concern that came out of tonight's meeting and questions, we would add that to our analysis this evening. So first item that we're going to be providing additional analysis and findings for is the issue of density and how the proposed general development plan complies with the density requirements of the Park Place concept plan and the minimum and maximum density requirements of the underlying zoning and the zoning code. So we'll be providing quite a bit of background on that with a view towards clarifying what is in the existing staff report. Also, the phasing and mechanism for when and how the Redland Road connection would be made. That is from Holcomb Boulevard down to Livesey and from Livesey down to Redland Road. How the proposed park realignment and a new layout for neighborhood commercial areas complies with the Park Place concept plan, including the requirement for a new local street connection in that area. The design of the cross-section for Holly Lane at the pinch point behind Trailview Estates, and public comments and concerns with respect to traffic, noise, grading, and buffering from adjacent Trailview Estates residents. And there are several different approaches to that we will be providing further analysis for. Bearing in mind that this is a general development plan and not a detailed development plan at this point. But at the same time, we want to address these concerns now so that when detailed development plan comes through in the future, we will pick it up in the conditions of approval. Also providing some staff input from engineering on concerns with respect to the geologic hazards in the area, slope stability, and differences in the underlying geology between the area cited for development in the North Village and the South Village areas south of Redland Road. Discussion of how lots will be sized to be compatible in their transition with adjacent development and protect existing surrounding residents. We heard site distance concerns for the Holly Lane extension. We also heard site distance concerns on Cattle Drive and Winston Drive, and traffic queuing concerns that we will be discussing and clarifying. I think there's a lot of information in the record. It's just difficult to find because it is a voluminous record, but we will be talking to that. An explanation from Deputy City Attorney Carrie Richter with respect to the case, land use case Baker versus City of Milwaukee, and the relevance of that case to this land use review. And with all of that, a revised staff report and revised conditions of approval that responds to the latest proposal by the applicant. And that revised proposal includes four main things. An extension of Holly Lane to Holcomb Boulevard, a reconfiguration of the proposed portion of the community park located at the southwest corner of the master plan area, a second street connection to provide additional connectivity to Livesey Road, and a plan that would prevent more than 2,000 average daily trips on Winston Drive, Cattle Drive, and Shartner Drive, and proposed Street A in Phase 1. With that, the rest of my staff report is background that has been provided in previous staff reports, just about a general overview of the development. being in 92 acres. It outlines the adjustments to the various development standards that are in the proposed plan, and the variance request for minimum lot sizes, which we are addressing in the staff report. Overall proposal at this point in time is for 476 total housing units, including 126 attached dwellings and 350 detached dwellings, phased over a period of up to 2030, so a 20-year horizon, with the very first phase proposed to be constructed by 2023. And that is my staff report. If you have any questions for me at this point, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Otherwise, we will respectfully request a continuance to August 22nd.
August 20, what?
When?
22nd?
Second.
August 22nd, okay. Just making it clear for the record. Okay,
Yeah.
any questions for Mr. Walter? I'm not seeing any. Okay, normally we hear from the applicant, but since we only have a couple of public comments, should we hear those before the applicant asks for their continuance? Would that work?
Yeah.
Okay. The applicant has already made the intention that they're going to ask for that continuance, but they still need to come up and formally ask. Right? No?
Yeah, I would expect the applicant wants to say a few words.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's do public comments then. I'm not sure how many we have online. It doesn't seem like there could be too
We've got
many.
the applicant's attorney online tonight, Garrett Stevenson.
Okay, we'll start with the ones here, which is Mr. Tom Guile and Miss Christine Kaczynski. If you want to both come up, and we'll just start with Tom, and then we'll go with Christine.
Before I start, Pete, you're such a soft-spoken guy, but she didn't hear a word of what you're saying. We got to remind you all, I hate to keep raising my hand all the time. It creeps, but some of you really need to keep your voice, the microphone close to you, or push your voice out a little bit. You've heard a lot of people comment about not hearing, and she didn't hear a word of what you said, and even I was struggling out there.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's no problem. I mean, I know you're still soft-spoken. And before I'm Tom Bell, Oregon City, but before I start, I want a clarification. Greg, you mentioned you started reading the newspaper and then put it aside. I'm wondering, because all these years as on the planning commission, we really encouraged people to read the papers. Oh, sorry. I'm wondering, and I guess I can ask this of our attorney, is it wrong for commissioners or anybody in the city that's in a position to read the paper? Or if, like Greg said, he read it and put it down, is that right? Are they not supposed to read the newspaper?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Yes, please.
So certainly, elected and appointed officials are certainly able to read the newspaper, that's fine. But they have to disclose any contact they receive from the newspaper. That's why we try to put it in the record so that all parties have an opportunity to respond to it.
I just wanted to
So we don't want-
clarify.
The point is, we don't want extra
Input.
extra hearing evidence that commissioners get outside of the public hearing process that participants don't have an opportunity to respond to.
Okay.
So it's up to planning commissioners to decide whether they want to read the article or if they don't want to. But if they choose to read any part of it, they need to disclose it in the hearing.
Okay. I asked because I've delivered every time I come here, the newspaper to you. And I believe that goes to all of you as well as the attorney, as well as to the applicants. So I would assume that you're probably reading those. I brought that up also because of the fact you started reading an article that I responded to. So if they're going to put that article as part of the record, then I will submit my response to that article so you can have both of them in there, okay? And they're aware of it. They've already read my article, haven't you, Harlan?
All right. Tom, can you please state your name and city of residence?
Oh, I thought I did when I came out. I said Tom Guile, Oregon City.
Okay, all right, sorry.
I know you're all getting kind of tired of hearing me. I'm getting tired of being here. I feel like I'm still on the commission. I've been here so many times. There's something I wanted to talk about tonight that it was 19 years ago today, July 25th, that I moved into my home. You've heard me talk about this. And since then, I was part of that generation at Portland State, the hippie generation. You can't trust anybody over 30, and you can't trust government. And if you want to change anything, you need to get involved. So when I moved to when I moved to Oregon City, I got involved. I was chair of the CIC for 3 years, moved on to the Planning Commission. You're all aware of that. And during all that time, I had somebody come to our hearings who I kind of got tired of, because she'd come and she'd just kind of like almost bitch us out a little bit. She was whining and complaining, and she's sitting next to me is Christine. But you know, every time she'd come, I realized she just wasn't an older lady yelling in the woods out there. She really had a lot to say. And I have never known anybody in my time as a commissioner or anything else of anybody who's known and done so much research. Sometimes I think she's done more with FEMA and all the other things than any of us on the commission ever does. I wish she had more time to tell you everything that she knows about FEMA and Holly Lane, et cetera. But in 3 minutes, it kind of cramps her style and makes her talk fast and makes her sometimes seem like she's yelling. But you really need to get to know this lady, because all my years and listening to her at the city commission, this lady knows a lot, and she knows her business. When we were discussing any development, she tends to talk about Holly Lanes. We must, as a city, also consider the consequences of impacts those decisions have on the future of our city. Our city's growing. When we first started planning and discussion on the Park Place concept plan, Pete was there, Christina Gardner was there, and that's how I got to know them back in 2004 and 5. And they kept talking about the Holly Lane, and that's why it's called Holly Lane Extension in our area, because we know that eventually Holly Lane was going to continue to connect the Holly Lane on the other side of Redland Road. And that's where her expertise comes in. She's lived over there. She's talked to the people there. She knows about the slides in the area. She's talked to what is it, Zima? No, not Zima, FEMA. And she's gone before Luba. Again, she knows a lot. The whole idea was she's got so many maps. She's been in contact with Scott Burns. We just had 2 earthquakes. She's always talking to Scott Burns. This lady knows a lot about the geology and how the city works, but her main focus has been on what's going to happen as a result of what we plan here. So I really would like to suggest, I know you're going to have a work session, and you don't want her to talk more than 3 minutes here, but I would hope that at some time you give her more time and listen to some of the things that she knows and she's studied. Again, she's done more than any of us ever have. So my main purpose of being here tonight was to tell you about her. She's a remarkable woman, and she knows so much of what she talks about, but she never gets the time to say it all. Thank you for listening to me. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I've never had a better introduction. My husband.
Is your sound on? Yeah.
It's on now, right? I'm Christine Kozinski. I'm in unincorporated Clackamas County on Holly Lane. I request that the hearing do stay open, and I hope that it will be continued, because I do have more information for you next time. For the past 2 to 3 years in my testimonies, I have highlighted the Fema Agreement. The actual name of this agreement is the City of Oregon City Addendum to the Clackamas County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. This plan also upgrades in 5 years. In 2024 is the next time that it's due. I've attached to my testimony just a few of the FEMA requirements in their agreement with Oregon City, found on pages 46, 47, and 48. My concerns are that the city is not complying with the FEMA requirements, and some of them are under multi-hazard number 2, use the mitigation plan to help the city's comprehensive plan meet state land use planning goal 7. In my eyes, the city does not meet goal 7. It is designed to protect life and property from natural disasters and hazards through planning strategies that restrict development in areas of known hazards. They ask you to use your zoning codes for the regulation of development in hazard-prone areas. I can tell you they would not approve R5. They would not approve lots as little as 1,800 square feet. I believe FEMA's talking more of R10 and above. They're asking you to use the natural mitigation planning to learn how to better integrate this natural hazard mitigation plan into the city's existing documents and programs, such as into the comprehensive plan and all the city ordinances. And this is in the city document that they're asking the city to do that. When Oregon City recently upgraded their hazard regulations, I even put in my testimony, this is the perfect time. You're upgrading your hazard regulations. Please put this FEMA natural hazard mitigation plan in there as they have requested. And I asked them to put it in all their city ordinances as FEMA has asked. I don't see that that's ever happened. Under multi-hazard number 3, maintain hazard information and public information materials and disseminate to the public through existing resources like the newspaper, the trail news, the website, the social media. If I've asked the city like 10 or 12 times in the past 20 years, I've asked them, please, please, please educate your people. If Highway 213 and Holly Lane are in a big earthquake, they both could go down at the same time. We're stuck. We can't go anywhere. All of Oregon City is stuck. You now have no roads. You have not told this to the people. You have no evacuation plan. We were all over each other a couple of years ago just trying to get out. So you need to educate your people. You also need to include insurance information. They're asking you to reach out to the public with education materials. Let them know there is no landslide insurance. So many of them buy a home, they think their homeowner's insurance covers them, only to find out if they get hit with a landslide, they're like $1 million in the hole, because they're not only paying for their home, but they're paying for all of the catastrophic infrastructure that happened. By the time they pay to fix the infrastructure, they have no money now to rebuild their home. Under multi-hazard number 4, maintain a healthy urban canopy. I don't believe we're doing a really good job. We're tearing down a whole bunch of trees. I want everybody to be awake when you drive by Plaid Pantry on Redland Road. Go by Plaid Pantry on your way to Holly Lane. And after you leave Plaid Pantry and you go into that treed canopy, you all of a sudden become 5 to 10 degrees cooler. So I went over to Tom's house the other day and went by Holcomb Boulevard where they're going to be building the 200 homes. Every tree, every little blade of grass, everything is gone. Aren't we building heat islands? Aren't we being, we're not being compliant with the energy grid. People are running their air conditioners day and night, and we're overusing our part of the energy grid. Maintain vegetation coverage for slope stability. I sure hope that they're going to do this in this plan. Under the landslide regulations, they're asking the city to limit construction in known landslide areas like Holly Lane, Livesey Road, Thayer Road, Maple Lane, all of these roads. As a matter of fact, Dogami calls Maple Lane landslide city. And it is. You go to the bottom where it connects there with Ferguson, it is landslide city. They're asking the projects to be carefully engineered so environmental impacts are avoided. Again, I don't believe we're doing very well there. Projects should be carefully engineered so that there are no adverse effects on other properties. And I can see what's happening on Trailview Drive, and there's a lot more that needs to be done to those people. I'm really concerned about the road going in there. Both the multi-hazard and the landslide sections and the wildfire sections in the FEMA Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan is to align plan goals, to protect life and property, to enhance the natural systems, encourage partnerships for implementation, and to promote public awareness. So my question to you and to Oregon City is, why is this not being done? I don't see it being done. I've testified for 2 or 3 years. If I've done something wrong, if I've said something wrong, I wish the city would say, please come and meet with us. I do not see that this city is compliant with the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. They're taking money from that plan, but they're not meeting any of the requirements. I believe all of that needs to be done before this Park Place crossing is finalized, because a lot of things that they're saying limit your development in hazardous areas. It's way overbuilt in Park Place already. Holly Lane's had its share of landslides. Hundreds of thousands of dollars my neighbors put out to fix their places. One neighbor moved away. They couldn't afford it. Please, can't we learn from our past and do the right thing? But Oregon City must use the correct documents. This is only one document. Oregon City is not compliant with their own comprehensive plan. They say heavy traffic on a road with landslides can make the landslides reactivate again. Going into the road to widen it, cutting into the road for anything, can make the landslides reactivate. We're in a very high susceptibility area, so why would the city think that, gee, we can take 30 to 40,000 trips a day from Beaver Creek, and we can take another 30,000 trips from this Park Place crossing plan, plus we can take 20,000 from Redland Road and another 20 to 30,000 from Maple Lane, and those are the recent road counts, and I'm going to give those to you at the next meeting. We are also not compliant with the DLCD Dogami Landslide Hazard Guide, because most of the hazard guide is written about statewide land use goal 7. And the city is not compliant with that. And yet every time the city approves a development and I read the staff report, they get to goal 7 and say, all these little words, and at the end, we comply. How can you comply when it is not in your requirements, when your city regulations? 2 years ago, I talked to a staff person in the planning department, and I was talking about a development, and I was talking about goal 7, and the planner told me, I don't think we comply with goal 7. And I said, why not? And she said, well, that's what I've been told. If Oregon City does not comply with goal 7, then everything that they've approved the last 10 years or so should have never been approved. This is why I'm bringing this in front of you now. And I want the city to answer me. After 2 or 3 years of telling you, you don't comply with these things, would somebody please open their eyes and talk to me or tell me, or if you made a mistake, that's okay. I'm not angry. I'm just trying to help the city do the right thing to protect the people. The people that live in hazardous areas, they need this. We are way overbuilding. Everything in Oregon City's been built. It's been easy. It's been flat land. Now you're up in the Park Place plan. Now you're on Holly Lane. All of a sudden, you're getting hit between your eyes because all of a sudden we're coming to you with all of these things that you should be doing and you're not. And unless you do them, you cannot possibly approve this plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Okay, do we have any comments, commenters online?
Yeah, we have several people online, and I know 2 of them have submitted presentations.
Okay.
Sure. So first, we'll go to Mr. Enoch Wang. And so if you want to unmute and we'll pull up your presentation. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Hi. So,
Give us 1 second. Give us 1 second. Presentation on.
Okay. It's the other presentation. Okay.
Okay. So you can tell us next slide.
Next slide, please. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the Oregon City Planning Commission, thank you.
State your name and city of residence. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. Yes, my name is Enoch Wong. I'm from Oregon City. Thank you for accepting additional public comments regarding the Park Place Crossing General Development Plan. Tonight, I'd like to take a slightly different approach in my comments rather than focusing on municipal codes, which I've done in previous comments. I wanted to appeal to the common sense and reason of the commission. We're not opposed to development. We're not, in the words of Mr. Barrow from Icon, short-sighted. We're just not naive. We see problems with the general development plan that have been discussed previously, and we see an inherent disconnect between the intent of the concept plan and the general development plan. Icon has raised the banner of affordable housing, but what we see is an attempt to fit as many lots as possible into the general development plan in order to maximize profits at the expense of the community. In the next few slides, I wanted to use an historical example to illustrate this current situation. So the Vasa was a warship commissioned by the King of Sweden in 1626. He was involved in a war with Poland, Lithuania, and the Navy, mostly comprised of small to medium-sized ships, had been ravaged by storms and battles. The king commissioned the Vasa to be the pride of the fleet. During the construction, he changed the design. We're all familiar with change orders, right? He changed the design and ordered 72 24-pound cannons, which was twice the number, double the weight of typical cannon aboard ships. This required them to create a second row of cannons to be included in the design 5 months into construction. And this was the first two-tiered gunship in the Swedish Navy. Close to 500 wooden sculptures celebrating Sweden and its king decorated the stern castle and the sides of the ship. Next slide. After years of construction, next slide. On August 10th, Vasa made its maiden voyage in calm weather. She opened her gun ports to fire salute to the city of Stockholm and the thousands of citizens and foreign ambassadors that were on hand to celebrate the launch. Next slide. Next slide. Unfortunately, a gust of wind caused her to list to her port side, causing water to rush into the lower gun ports. The Swedish sank within 20 minutes of its launch. Worst of all, it was only 400 feet offshore in a depth of only 105 feet of seawater, so the tops of the masts were in full view of the citizens of Stockholm. Obviously, this slide. Obviously, an inquiry was made into the reasons for this ignominious failure. The short answer was nobody took responsibility or was found to be at fault. Modern analysis, however, showed that there was a very high center of gravity with high superstructures, heavy ornamentation, and the extra weight from the doubled number of guns and the doubled weight. There was some evidence that the whole situation could have been avoided. The stability testing that was done before the ship launched was that they would have sailors run from side to side, and after 3 passes, the admiral who was supervising the testing was afraid that the whole ship would capsize, but because the king was pushing to have the ship launched, he didn't feel comfortable kind of raising his hand and putting a halt to the whole thing. Next slide. So how does this tale of a 17th century Swedish warship relate to Park Place Crossing? Simply put, variations from the original plan may have significant unintended consequences. Density of housing, just like the density of the guns in the VASA, does matter. ICON made it clear in the July 11th meeting that they weren't planning to build the minimum number of lots. And I think that the density of housing is one of the fundamental problems that are raising questions for this plan. I'm asking the commission that you should not ignore the warning signs. Don't let the insistence of the developer make you compromise common sense. Don't let poor planning and execution make Park Place Crossing stand out in the harbor of Oregon City. This is, like the VASA, the first development of this size that the commission is dealing with, and we want to make sure we do things right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, who's next?
There is another presentation from Ms. Mansouri, Roya Mansouri. So if you want to unmute and then just go back and we'll pull up your presentation.
I'm going to have you just introduce all the people since you've got the list. Okay, thank you.
I will do that. I need to hit escape.
It's saying it's connecting. It just dropped the connection.
Okay, can you hear us?
We could not hear Ms. Mansouri, so I don't know if you can.
Okay, she's going to just use my computer here.
Okay.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. All right. My name is Roya Mansouri. I live in Oregon City, and I want to thank you for letting me take the time, or giving me the time to discuss and present this presentation. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So I've included the website for the Park Place concept plan that all of you are very familiar with. And what I wanted to talk about briefly today were three issues. One having to do with the green edges, one having to do with housing density, and also the importance of green space for children in an urban setting. Next slide. What are green edges? Use of green edges are used to define neighborhoods and urban developments, placing edges around and between residential areas and existing neighborhoods, as well as having larger rear setbacks for new lots that border existing neighborhoods. Next slide, please. We are living adjacent to two parts of the Phase 1 and Phase 2 development, and there are 9 lots currently in contact with our lot. It is quite unclear where there are green edges for buffering. As you can see here, along the western border and the northern border, there's no evidence of any kind of, there's a little bit, I should say, on the west side, just with natural topography, but on the north side of the lot, there isn't anything that shows where there are green edges for buffering, even though along, if you go to the next slide, I think it shows it more clearly. Well, this shows that in this, you can find this in the appendix, within the Sherrod summary, there were some deviations or alternatives for planning, and in this slide you can see that Phase 1 area actually was developed. There was plans potentially to develop it as a park space and a green space, and not have any lots there. And if you can go to the next slide. Next slide. Yes. This is if you can go back a couple of slides. Yeah. Forward. Yep. Excellent. This was another alternative revealing a lot more green space. Next slide. Though there was a map of their current plan. It was there a minute ago. Not of the alternative design, but of the part that the applicants, yeah. All right. That must be in this. Okay, and go back one more slide. Sorry about this. Okay, so in terms of housing density, from the Park Place crossing plan itself, the plan was that properties along Lower Livesay Road and Holly Lane were to remain as low density clusters. They would have the potential to transition to medium density, but in the near term, they were expected to retain the lowest densities. Next slide, please. Here, however, you can see in the applicant's proposal that the highest density lots are all along Holly Lane. Also, in this slide, you can see that even though there is some green edge buffering with all the other developments, there is no evidence of any buffering between our property and all the back end lots in that phase 1 development. Next slide, please. There's the impact of increased density housing. I was driving through some neighborhoods in Happy Valley and I snapped some pictures. This may actually be low density housing I think it all depends obviously per acre, but this could be low density or medium density housing here. You can see how clustered it is. Next slide, please. It reminded me of the movie A Wrinkle in Time, where Meg goes to the planet of Camazotz, where it's this sort of a dystopic view where people are doing the same thing at the same time, controlled by one entity. And when I put the pictures side by side, I thought, wow, that looks very similar to it, what we don't really want in terms of future views of our urban living. Next slide, please. In this area that I looked, I don't know if you can actually find the park. It's tiny. It's on the left-hand corner. There is a minuscule playground right there. And then a tiny patch of lawn. And it was surprising to me. It was kind of depressing, actually. And very, very small strips of green space for any house, basically as large of a square footage house as possible on a tiny little lot of land. Next slide, please. The argument that the applicant is making is to create increased affordability. At least that's one of the arguments. But however, increasing density doesn't necessarily make houses cheaper. It just increases how many houses can be sold at a still high premium by keeping square footage and limiting green space. The original Park Place crossing plan was designed more to be a village, not a neighborhood, a dystopic neighborhood devoid of green space. And green space that isn't actually very accessible. The people in phase 1 would have to walk all the way to the west end side to access any kind of park. Next slide, please. So just an example of kind of the idea of the village concept and a village green that's so important for communities who have not very much private space. Next slide. So there are examples, again, that we are not against development, but we want to have more modern, reasonable development. There is a development out in Bend called the Parks at Broken Top. They designed a development of a variety of different sized houses, but designed large open space areas, 2 large community parks with park shelters, water features, green spaces, bicycle trails, alley-fed garages, and it worked well. Next slide. And you can see in a satellite view that these arrows define the parks that the houses were clustered around, so everybody had very easily accessible green space. There's a little community pool too as well. Next slide, please. If you've ever been to Germany or other parts of Europe and riding around in trains, you will see the Schreber Garden. This is Berlin, but in all big cities, you'll find these. These were named after Dr. Moritz Schreber, a 19th century German doctor who insisted children in these industrialized cities needed space to run around. It also helped lower income families, as well as families living during the World War I and World War II eras, to grow their own fruits and vegetables, and was significant in preventing starvation during these times. Today, the families and the individuals who live in these areas get to have classes and workshops, a place to socialize. Often there are tables in these little gardens where people can eat and have a meal together. They learn about seed preservation, etc. Next slide. So why is green space so important? UNICEF, but they're not the only ones. There's multiple articles now coming out, especially in the aftermath of COVID-19, that show that the necessity of urban green space is optimal for both adults, but also very much for children. You can, obviously, green space could be a tree, it could be a roof garden, but we're also talking about accessible space that people can use. As you can see here, home and community gardens, playgrounds, agricultural land, vacant lots. Violence and crime tend to decrease around these spaces, as well as they act as traffic calming elements and decrease risk of traffic accidents. Next slide, please.
I need to interject a little bit.
Okay.
You're approaching 10 minutes. How many slides you got left?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm at near the end. I can speed up.
Okay, we haven't been strict on time, but when it gets over 10 minutes, we start to wonder.
I didn't realize it was that long. All right. Well, I will. I've got, I think, maybe 3 slides left.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So you can read this for yourself. These are all examples of benefits of green spaces for diversity, having gardens. Next slide. This is just a table that shows impact of green spaces, improvement with children, more physical activity, less likely to develop nearsightedness, improvement with ADHD, stronger neighborhood social cohesion. Next slide. This slide is important because the recommended actions for municipal governments were to support real estate developers to meet and exceed regulations on the inclusion of safe and accessible green space by new developments. Next slide. So in conclusion, increased density of housing doesn't necessarily result in increased affordability, increased health, or increased social cohesion. We want significant green space to increase cohesion, decrease anxiety, increase livability, which I think is really a sales point for people who are looking to have both affordable and healthy living. The Park Place community was designed to be more of a village, not this kind of dystopic, crowded, cramped design that it seems that we're looking at now. And then last slide. We have the opportunity to be on the cutting edge to create a newly modern, progressive design of urban living with open spaces, sport fields, playgrounds, community gardens, interactive areas, which I think would be very advanced and progressive of the city. So that's my piece. Thank you for letting me go over time. I very much appreciate it.
Do we have any more?
So I will kind of go through the list and see if anybody else has any comments to make. And I'll start with Sharon Adams. And so if you have a comment, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I read the short-sighted commentary by Mr. Harlan Barrow. I find it very offensive, first of all. But anyway, he is promising the world. Anybody that builds houses has to pay these development fees. So I'm guessing, what's he giving us here? Is he going to float bonds or what? He's promising schools, etc. he would, I mean, he wants to put up a traffic light, maybe that might be needed, but at what cost? I mean, is he passing this on to the people that buy the house? I mean, it doesn't make sense what he put down in his commentary about how he's going to give us the world in order for Icon to build this tract development. So it just baffles me how people can pay attention to him. First of all, there's nothing special, and he won't stick to the plan, of course, we know that. He just wants to slam as many houses as he can per square foot to make his profit margin. Now, we can only hope Jerome Powell raises the interest rate sky high. That's what I'm hoping. And just create that havoc that came in 08. So anyway, that's enough said by me. Why he would even suggest something like this and not even back it up in his 7-inch binder. Did anybody pin him down to where he's getting this money from? I want to know from the city planning what he's talking about. Nobody's answering questions. We're just giving you fuel, and you're not even doing anything with it. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you.
Next is Glenn Sutherland. Mr. Sutherland, if you have a comment, you can unmute.
I'm part of the applicant's team, and I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And so then the final person, not part of the applicant's team, is Jed Peterson.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Jed Peterson. I'm a citizen of Oregon City. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. First, I would implore the Planning Commission to reject the proposal. It is clear by all who have attended these meetings and reviewed the materials that ICON's original submission was incomplete and inaccurate. My house wasn't even on the original submitted map entitled Current Conditions. Subsequent responses by ICON have been disappointing at best, and it has been such a public relations disaster for ICON that they had Harlan Barrow write an insulting diatribe with a false narrative. They should be ashamed, and it's embarrassing. They plead that they're trying to fulfill the original objectives of the Park Place concept, and yet they have failed to address the most pressing issues. And instead, they try to maximize profit by squeezing in as many houses as possible without concern of threatened lives and existing codes. A connector road should be required, and yet that is not their priority. They ask to move forward with a wink-wink intention to build a road in the future with no enforceable requirement. That is unacceptable. We, the citizens of Oregon City, will suffer, and they will laugh all the way to the bank in West Lynn, avoiding our traffic challenges in Oregon City. Further, they've requested a number of variances that will damage the neighborhood and leave a permanent scar on the community. They have requested to squeeze homes in a neighborhood without the desired alleys and garage design that are vital to ensure safety and walkability of the communities. Again, this is clearly just to maximize their profits. This plan has been described accurately as horrible. ICON's traffic report was grossly inaccurate, performed during the peak of COVID-19 restrictions. Just last week, I had several episodes of long delays between Oregon 213 and Holcomb Boulevard. It will only worsen with the existing projects, and this project is projected to push it over the top. The lack of a submitted staff report is troubling and contrary to OR 197.797. Recommendations by staff and applicant responses continue to be pushed off. These moving targets prejudice our substantial rights to a full and fair hearing. Again, I ask that you reject this proposal. These meetings have come at great cost in terms of time consumed, and the only people who are currently benefiting from this continuance are the attorneys. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner LaSalle. Break? 5-minute break? Okay. 5-minute break.
I don't know.
Yes, they do it. Well, maybe not with COVID. Or Clark County used to do their own.
Yeah. Okay, we're back from break. Back from break. All right. We've heard from the public, and as far as I know, now we are going to hear from the applicant, and it's going to be a request for a continuance. And obviously, you can say more than that, but whatever you need to say. And please state your name and city of residence. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Harlan Barrow. I'm the Land Acquisition and Development Manager for Icon Construction. I live in Tigard. We are here to request a continuance. We were advised that it would need to be continued until the August 22nd hearing because you already had a couple things on the August 18th hearing. So that's what we're here to do, and we would appreciate you continuing until the 22nd of August.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I believe all we need is a motion to continue to the 22nd of August.
I'll make a motion to keep the public record open and continue GLUA-21-45 to our August 22nd meeting.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion from Commissioner Mitchell and a second from Commissioner Gage. Can I call roll, please?
Commissioner Dawson.
Aye.
Commissioner Staggs.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
Commissioner Schlagenhofer.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Gage.
Aye.
And Commissioner Stoll.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, that's the end of the public hearings for tonight. Do we have any communications?
No, none from me. Thank you.
Commissioner Mitchell.
I have one quick thing that I would like to see us discuss in a future work session, having to do with type 2 reviews and how we distinguish type 2 from type 3. A couple of things brought this to mind. One is at the end of my street, there's a type 2 proposal that's in the process right now for 250 apartments, and they're building 170 right now on a different project, but this is a separate one. And I wrote a public comment, but what I realized, and I'm kind of mad at myself that I didn't realize this before now, is that on a type 2, the deadline for written comments comes, but there's no staff report at that point. So as a citizen, I don't have a way to provide public input into what's in the staff report. Now, maybe my concerns are going to be covered by the staff report. Maybe they're not. Maybe they get partway there, whatever. So that part of the process bothers me. And the other thing, I think I'm correct on this, that in the last 3 years, one of our type 3 decisions was appealed to the city commission, but there have been 2 type 2 proposals appealed to the city commission. And they were both much larger projects in terms of impact to a lot of the things that we have handled as type 3. So I know why we have the different types, but I don't know what my fellow commissioners think, but to me, I don't think we are assigning those correctly, because I think there are type 2 projects that are very large, that are of significant concern to the neighbors, and the opportunity for public involvement, to me, isn't what it should be on those. So I don't know if, I think I'm talking about a combination of maybe we change the criteria a bit for what's a type 2 versus a type 3, or we change the process, or some combination of the both. So I'd like to see us discuss that at a work session.
Okay, we can put that on an agenda to talk about the differences.
Okay, anything else from anyone, any other commissioners? Okay, we're adjourned.